Ethan had always considered himself an ordinary young man. At 24 years old, he lived in a small town just outside the bustle of a bigger city. He worked part-time at a hardware store, balancing long shifts with the occasional night class at community college. He wasn't wealthy, he wasn't particularly popular, and he often wondered if his life held any real meaning. Every night, as he lay in his modest bedroom, he whispered small prayers for guidance, though secretly he questioned whether anyone was really listening. On a gray Thursday morning, Ethan woke with the heaviness that comes when routine feels like a cage. The alarm clock buzzed at 6, the same tired ringtone that had dragged him out of bed every day for years. He stared at the ceiling for a moment, wondering if this day would be any different. He had no clue that the day ahead would etch itself into his memory forever. After showering and dressing in his faded jeans and work polo, he grabbed a quick breakfast, just a slice of toast and coffee, and stepped outside. The autumn air was crisp, carrying a faint scent of damp leaves. His old car coughed as it started, another reminder of his limited means. But Ethan had learned to make do, to be grateful for what he had. Traffic into town was sluggish. He sighed as he tapped the steering wheel, the radio humming softly in the background. His mind wandered. He thought about his late father, a man of unshakable faith who always told him, "Son, life will surprise you when you least expect it. Be ready to see God's hand in the little things." Ethan missed him terribly. Since his passing, Ethan had drifted, uncertain of what he was supposed to be doing with his life. By the time he parked near the hardware store, he was already mentally drained. The idea of another long day stocking shelves, helping customers find nails and hammers, and smiling despite his fatigue made him groan quietly. But duty called. Around midday, during his short lunch break, Ethan decided to step outside. The store's small break room felt suffocating, so he walked toward the town square, where a handful of benches surrounded a fountain. The weather had turned colder, but the brisk air helped clear his head. He unwrapped his sandwich, chewing absently as he watched people pass by. An older woman fed pigeons. Children laughed as they ran across the cobblestones. A businessman barked into his phone. Life moved, fast and indifferent. Then Ethan noticed something unusual. Near the edge of the fountain, sitting hunched on a bench, was an older man. His hands trembled visibly, and his face was pale, lined with deep weariness. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, as though he had fought through a storm just to make it here. Ethan felt a tug in his chest. Something about the man's demeanor seemed broken, fragile, almost desperate. Ethan tried to look away, but his father's words echoed in his mind. "Son, you don't ignore the little nudges. Sometimes they are invitations." He hesitated, sandwich still in hand. Approaching a stranger wasn't something he did often. He was shy by nature, cautious not to intrude. Yet the pull grew stronger, as if invisible hands urged him forward. Finally, gathering courage, Ethan stood and walked slowly toward the man. "Sir, are you okay?" he asked softly. The man looked up, startled. His eyes were red, glassy, and filled with a sorrow that pierced Ethan to the core. I'm fine," the man stammered, though clearly he was not. Ethan sat beside him, unsure what to do next. "You don't look fine. I mean, forgive me if I'm intruding, but you look like you could use a friend." The man's lips quivered. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared at the ground. Then he whispered, "Everything in my life is falling apart. My wife passed away last year. My daughter, she barely speaks to me anymore. And today I lost my job. 30 years, and they let me go like I was nothing. I don't know if I can keep going." His voice cracked, and his shoulders shook. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He didn't know this man's name, didn't know his story beyond these few words, but the pain radiating from him was undeniable. For a moment, Ethan sat in silence, his own mind racing. What could he possibly say? How could he fix this? Then, without fully thinking, he reached out. He placed his hand gently over the man's trembling one. "I don't know what you're going through," Ethan said quietly, "but I believe you're not alone. Can I pray with you?" The man looked at him, startled. His lips parted, as if he wanted to refuse, but then his shoulders slumped. With a slight nod, he allowed it. So right there, in the middle of the town square, Ethan bowed his head. "God," he whispered, his voice steady despite his own nerves, "please be with this man. You know his pain, his struggles, his heartbreak. Remind him that he matters, that his life still has purpose. Give him strength, give him hope, give him peace. Amen. When Ethan opened his eyes, he saw tears streaming down the man's cheeks. But they weren't just tears of sorrow, they carried something else. Relief, perhaps. Release. The man squeezed Ethan's hand tightly. Thank you, he whispered. You have no idea how much I needed that. Ethan smiled faintly, humbled. You're welcome. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us we're not invisible. The man finally introduced himself as Daniel. They talked for a few more minutes. Ethan learned that Daniel had once been a regional manager at a large company, respected and financially stable, until corporate restructuring left him discarded. His late wife had been his anchor, and without her, he struggled to keep afloat. His daughter, bitter and distant, barely returned his calls. Daniel hesitated, his voice breaking. I was planning to end it all today. But then you came. Ethan's heart froze. He realized that his small decision, to stand, to walk over, to hold a hand and whisper a prayer, might have saved this man's life. When his lunch break ended, Ethan reluctantly returned to work, but his mind was consumed. He kept thinking about Daniel, replaying the moment over and over. He didn't know if he'd ever see him again, but he knew that something inside him had shifted. The days passed, and Ethan went about his usual routines. But deep down, a fire had been lit. He started noticing people more, coworkers who looked tired, neighbors who seemed lonely, strangers who carried invisible burdens. Each time, he remembered Daniel, and he wondered, what if I could be the one to make a difference, even in small ways? One evening, a week later, Ethan's phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. He hesitated but answered. Hello, Ethan. The voice was familiar, it was Daniel. I had to call. I don't know how to explain this, but that day, you saved me. You truly did. And I wanted you to know, I've started talking to my daughter again. We're meeting for dinner this weekend. I don't know what will come of it, but it's a start. I also reached out to an old friend about some work opportunities. For the first time in months, I feel like maybe there's hope. Ethan swallowed hard, emotion welling in his chest. I'm so glad, Daniel. Really. You deserve healing. I don't think I would have found it without you, Daniel said softly. You were a stranger, yet you treated me like family. I won't forget it. The call ended, but Ethan sat in silence, tears in his own eyes. For years he had wondered if his life had any meaning. Now, for the first time, he felt the answer might be yes. Weeks turned into months. Ethan and Daniel kept in touch, meeting occasionally for coffee. Their friendship blossomed. Daniel became like a mentor, encouraging Ethan to pursue his studies seriously. He shared wisdom from his years of management, guiding Ethan in ways no professor ever had. Slowly, Ethan's own life began to change. He applied for internships, inspired by Daniel's guidance, and to his surprise, he landed one with a reputable firm. His confidence grew. He began speaking up more, volunteering at his church, even leading small prayer groups. Each step felt like a ripple from that single moment at the fountain. But the most profound change was internal. Ethan no longer felt invisible. He realized that even in his ordinariness, he had the power to impact lives. Sometimes, it wasn't about grand achievements or wealth, it was about showing up, about being present in someone else's darkest hour. Years later, when Ethan looked back, he could trace the arc of his life to that day in the town square. The day he reached out his hand to a stranger. The day he prayed. The day everything changed. Because kindness, he realized, doesn't just save others. It saves us too.